Why can't the DC live action movies be this good? Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. Today I want to go through and give my thoughts on Batman The Long Halloween Part 2, which was just released digitally and is due for Blu-ray release on the 10th of August. I had two major issues with Part 1, being the animation was sometimes quite cheap and robotic, and that the first part had long pauses in speech that were really unnecessary and unnatural and quite distracting. But neither of those issues seem to be present here. While the animation has some still aspects to it, there doesn't seem to be sequences where the rest of the frame is still, while say a single arm moves. They seem to have rectified that from the first part. And the voice acting in this movie was fantastic. Some of the best voice acting I've heard recently, but I'll talk about that more later. What I will say first off is that they do make changes here from the original comic. So if you are going in expecting a direct copy of the comic story arc, just translated to animation, you're going to be surprised. However, the changes they have made are fairly mild. It's not by any means a drastic departure from the source material, and it does make the story better. It fixes a few of the issues with the original story. There is, however, one sequence with Scarecrow, Mad Hatter and Batman that plays out different to the comic, and it seems a little contrived the way it resolves. There's no real reason for them to do what they do, rather than just seizing the opportunity available as you would expect. Overall though, it's a little more cohesive and flows a little better than the original comic, and for the most part, the character motivations are clearer and more defined, and lend themselves more to the story being told. Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's original comic, while one of the best Batman stories, could have done with a better story editor. The way they've told this story, the way it gets wrapped up, it's cleaner than it was in the comic, and this story is better for it. This story actually borrows a very small element from the Long Halloween sequel Dark Victory, and the changes they do make here in this story would make a direct story translation of Dark Victory difficult. But having said that, I would love to see this team, the writer Tim Sheridan and the director Chris Palmer, take on that project, because this movie is fantastic and the two parts together make an excellent adaptation to film of the source material. If only the DC live action movies were this good. This part is rated R and uses that violence to tell a more adult story. None of that violence is ever gratuitous, the way you'd get in, say, the upcoming Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms movie. As I mentioned, the animation in Part 2 improves on the minor issues with Part 1, which is especially noticeable, particularly for example in the fight scene right near the start between Poison Ivy and Catwoman. The whole sequence in the comics was about 5 panels, but the sequence goes for about 2 minutes in the movie, and none of it is boring or seems like padding. But this same sequence is also where you most notice the downgrade between the dynamic drawings of the comic and the more cartoon style animation that they use in the movie. As you can see in this single picture of Catwoman, it's not even moving, but it has this raw kinetic energy that the cartoon animation just can't match. So I suppose my major issue with the movie is that if you have read the source material, you may find the movie art style and animation a little flat compared to the comics. There are two areas where the movie art and animation are better than the comics though. The first is in the drawing of Bruce Wayne himself. Bruce Wayne is supposed to be this debonair, super rich, handsome playboy. And in the comics of The Long Halloween, on first look at a panel, I'd often think I was looking at one of the Ronin's men rather than Bruce Wayne. And only context and dialogue resolved that. In the movie art, you get a much more consistent style, so there's never any doubt who you're looking at. The second area is seen in a couple of sequences when Bruce is being affected mentally. Batman comics and movies are generally quite dark in tone and colour palette, and these sequences add some beautiful splashes of colour into what is a fairly flat and muted look overall. Being a departure from the general colour tone, it's also a great visual cue that something is wrong. I praised the voice cast for doing an excellent job in the first part, but this part is even better. Jensen Ackles as Bruce Wayne Batman does a great job here and never devolves into the kind of guttural sound that we got from Christian Bale's Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy. And his chemistry with the late Naya Rivera as Selina Kyle Catwoman is absolutely magnetic. I personally hope that Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz can muster something similar for the Batman. Because Naya Rivera here pretty much steals most of the scenes she's in, which is pretty hard to do with just voice work. I would have loved to have seen Naya Rivera as a live-action Catwoman. In fact, the three main characters, Batman, Catwoman and Two-Face, I would have liked seeing all of them played by their voice actors in real life. Of the new additions, Katie Sackhoff as Poison Ivy was my favourite, though she doesn't actually get a whole lot of dialogue in this movie. She pulls off the seductress aspect of Ivy flawlessly, and I do hope we get to see her reprise this role in a future movie. I also thought Layla Berzins as Sophia Falcone did a great job as well in a fairly substantial role. My least favourite character was the Mad Hatter, not because of his voice actor, just because I found his rhyming dialogue annoying. The most underused character goes to Penguin, who has about 2 minutes screen time at max, and most disappointing is the Joker, who doesn't do much in this movie, but that's in line with the comic. However, this is Josh Duhamel's movie. His depiction of Harvey Dent as they explore his mental breakdown before, during and after his transformation into Two-Face is just absolutely outstanding. I said in part 1 that he was amazing, but here, as he actually gets to explore that mental breakdown and as he changes his voice as he becomes Two-Face, it is honestly some of the best voice acting I've heard, and I hope he gets a chance to reprise this character in the future. Overall, The Long Halloween Part 2 deviates slightly from the source material, but is a satisfying conclusion to Part 1. My only wish for both parts is that the art style was a little more dynamic given the art from the source material. I haven't watched Part 1 and Part 2 yet as one long movie, but I think together they will be a great 3-hour story and one I'd be happy to sit through. Make sure you watch the post-credits scene at the very end of the credits. It's clearly setting this Batman story into a shared universe with the more recent DC animated stories. Thanks for watching. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Or consider supporting the page through our Patreon. If you think I missed anything or have any comments, put them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.